In this video, we're looking at how Hitler created a dictatorship in Germany in 1933 to 34. And ultimately, this is about explaining how Hitler consolidated his power and became the Fuhrer. We're focusing on the Reichstag fire, the Enabling Act, the removal of opposition groups, the Night of the Long Knives, and lastly, the death of Hindenburg and Hitler becoming the Fuhrer. Hitler's power was limited when he took over as Chancellor on the 30th of January 1933, and this was for several different reasons. First of all, the Weimar Constitution limited his power as he was only Chancellor, and there were various restrictions on the things that he could do. Hindenburg, as President, still retained the majority of the power and could remove Hitler. Only 2 of the 12 members of the cabinet were actually Nazis or NSDAP members, Wilhelm Frick and Hermann Göring. This meant the cabinet could dominate Hitler, including the influential von Papen as Vice-Chancellor. And the NSDAP only made up 1/3 of the Reichstag. So the general perception was that Hitler was under control of the Weimar system and elite. And in fact, the New York Times observed that the composition of the cabinet leaves Hitler no scope for his dictatorial ambition. But soon they would all be proved wrong. Soon after he became Chancellor, a major event gave Hitler an opportunity to seize more power. And this was the Reichstag fire on the 27th of February 1933. Now on this day, the Reichstag, the German parliament, was burned down, and Marinus van der Lubbe, a young communist, was caught, tried and executed for this crime. Hitler portrayed the fire as a communist conspiracy and argued that van der Lubbe had not been acting on his own, but was acting on behalf of the Communist Party, and this was in fact a terrorist act. He then used the fire as a chance to crack down on his opponents and a chance for himself to seize more power. So how did Hitler use the Reichstag fire? First of all, he got Hermann Göring as head of the police to arrest 4,000 communists on the night of the fire, greatly crippling the Communist Party. He then pressured Hindenburg into declaring a state of emergency on the basis that this had been a communist terrorist act, and allow Hitler to rule through Article 48 using presidential decrees, effectively bypassing the Reichstag. He also persuaded Hindenburg to call another election for 5th March 1933 because he sensed that he could seize more power and more support in the Reichstag. Hitler then sought to seize more power. He issued a decree for the protection of the people in the state that gave him the power to imprison political opponents and ban communist newspapers. He ensured the police turned a blind eye to the violence of the SA so they could intimidate and threaten people, and he persuaded German industrialists like Gustav Krupp to bankroll his campaign. In fact, in one meeting, 3 million marks were donated to his campaign, and it ended up being a very bloody election campaign. Violent clashes led to 70 deaths across Germany, and in the end this ensured the Nazis won 288 seats in the Reichstag. He then used his emergency powers to ban the 81 communists from taking their seats, which gave him a majority in the German parliament. Hitler used this majority in the Reichstag to get support for the Enabling Act, which was passed in March of 1933. As without the communists, Hitler had a 2/3 majority in the Reichstag, and actually he also used his stormtroopers to intimidate the 1/3 he did not control. He suggested the Enabling Act, a law that would destroy the power of the Reichstag, and illustratively, the full name was the Law for the Removal of the Distress of the People and the Reich. The key parts of it were that it undermined the Constitution by stating that the Reich Cabinet could pass new laws, the Reich Cabinet being Hitler and his supporters. Laws could overrule the Constitution, and that laws would be proposed by the Chancellor. Now normally, to change the Constitution, you need a 3/4 or 2/3 of the votes in the Reichstag. But this would mean that Hitler could effectively change the constitution without that level of support. On the 24th of March 1933, it was passed by 444 votes to 94, with the support of the Nazis, the National and Centre parties, and with the Communist Party banned from taking part. But even with this support, it still relied heavily on intimidation and threats from the Nazi SA and stormtroopers. Effectively, this act removed democracy from Germany and was the end of the Weimar Constitution, and was simply renewed in 1937. And after that, Hitler started to remove other opposition, now that he no longer had to rely on the Reichstag to do so. First of all, he focused on trade unions. Now, trade unions were supported by communists and could be a potential source of opposition. If working men in trade unions decided to strike, this could be an opposition to the government. So in May 1933, Nazis broke into trade union offices and arrested their members. Hitler then used his powers to ban trade unions and made strikes illegal so they could no longer oppose him. He then focused on other political parties. In May 1933, he also attacked his two main rival political parties, the Social Democrats and the Communist Party, or the SPD and KPD, with SA destroying their newspapers and confiscating their funds. In July 1933, all political parties were made illegal except the Nazi Party. And then he focused on the other local government. He wanted complete control from the centre rather than the Länder having any say. So in January 1934, he abolished the local governments and replaced them with Nazi governors selected by him. Now that Hitler had complete control of the country, and effectively he had made Germany a one-party state, with the Nazi Party being in control, he now wanted to make sure there was no threat from his own party, in particular Ernst Rohm, the leader of the SA. So as the leader of the only party in Germany, Hitler was secure the Nazi Party would continue, but he faced threats from within. Hitler believed that Ernst Rohm was a threat, as Rohm controlled the 3 million strong SA who were loyal to him initially, and he had increased the size of the SA by merging an army veterans group, the Stahlhelm, with the SA. He felt that the SA may feel undervalued by Hitler. 60% of them were permanently unemployed and were bitter that their lives had not improved. And Rohm also opposed Hitler's link with wealthy industrialists and wanted to be more socialist and help the working man. Rohm was also criticised by others. The German army was very worried that Rohm's SA would replace them, and effectively the SA had been very helpful to Hitler when he was trying to seize power, but now he actually had the control of the German army, and the SA was starting to be a nuisance, as the German army, still quite powerful, were worried that the 3 million strong SA had far more men than their 100,000 strong army. But also within the Nazi Party, leaders of the SS, such as Heinrich Himmler, resented Rohm and his influence within the party. This led to the Night of the Long Knives on the 30th of June 1934. So in 1934, the leaders of the army and SS warned Hitler that Rohm was planning to seize power. So Hitler invited Rohm and 100 SA leaders to a hotel in Bavaria on the 30th of June and had them arrested and shot by the SS. This was known as the Night of the Long Knives. Von Papen, who was still Vice-Chancellor, protested about the killings to Goering. Von Papen was told that the SS had things under control and that he should return to his home for his own safety. However, the SS arrived at his offices before him, shot his press secretary and arrested his staff, and then eventually von Papen arrived home and was effectively put under house arrest. Ex-Chancellor von Schleicher was shot with his wife, and leading Nazis like Gregor Strasser were also killed, as Hitler made sure he had complete control. Hermann Goering told the press that these killings were to stop a second revolution and so were justified. And so, although the people were worried, and some protested, most were pleased that the violent SA had been silenced, and Germany seemed to be calmer. The last remaining obstacle to Hitler's power over Germany was the President Hindenburg. But Hindenburg died of old age on the 2nd of August 1934, at the age of 87. Hitler took over supreme power, immediately declaring himself Fuhrer, combining the powers of the President to those he had as the Chancellor. He then forced an oath of loyalty from every soldier in the army, who were much more amenable to Hitler now that he had dealt with the SA and made it clear that he supported the army. He called a plebiscite, a public vote, to confirm Hitler as Fuhrer for the 19th of August. 90% of people voted in favour of Hitler, with the Nazis combining propaganda with intimidation to gain support. The Weimar Republic was now effectively over. Hitler's Third Reich had begun. In summary, Hitler began 1933 as Chancellor, but his power was severely limited by a range of factors in the Weimar Constitution. He used the Reichstag fire to crack down on opposition and gain emergency powers to attack people like the Communist Party. He called another election and then used his emergency powers to intimidate his opponents, winning a majority and banning communists. He passed the Enabling Act to give himself dictatorial powers, which he was able to renew in 1937. He then used these powers to crush trade unions, other political parties and the local governments to ensure there was no one who could stand up to him. He still faced considerable threat from Ernst Rohm and the SA, so he had Rohm and 100 SA leaders arrested and killed during the Night of the Long Knives. And after the death of Hindenburg, there was no one left to stand in his way, so he declared himself Fuhrer, got the army to swear allegiance to him, and had a public vote to declare himself as leader and the ruler of the Third Reich.